I'm Lizzy, and my project is called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, the Reform of State Mental Hospitals. No one can be certain that he is safe from the specter of mental illness. It lays its hand on rich and poor, high and low, young and old, men and women, intelligent and ignorant. No class or creed, no race or clan is beyond its reach. Frank L. Wright, Jr., Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Hey, Johnny, come here. Grandpa knows you don't like taking these pills, but it's a whole lot better than it used to be. Let me tell you a story. Back in World War II, people with mental illnesses were sent to insane asylums. People with illnesses just like yours. In reaction to witnessing horrible conditions in mental hospitals during World War II, conscientious objectors just like me helped revolutionize care for mentally ill patients and the way they were treated. This led to a public outcry and eventual reform in the way mental patients were cared for. So guess what? In 1943, as a conscientious objector, instead of going off to fight in the war, I was part of the civilian public service, doing work of national importance. I worked in the forest industry, doing things like clearing walking paths. After about 100 days, I asked to be transferred to a new branch they were trying out. I wanted to go work at an insane asylum, or state hospital, called Byberry in Philadelphia. Do you remember my friend Hal Barton? He told me he recalled reading an issue of the Unit Number 49 Philadelphia State Hospital paper, in which the statement was made by CPS men that if additional help had been available, George would not have died last night. We wanted to help save lives in this time of war, not take them. That's why we weren't fighting. Philadelphia State Hospital, Byberry, was the place that needed us most. I remember reading a notice from Mansfield State Hospital in Connecticut sent to the Selective Service. It said they wanted a mature man, at least 24 or 25 years of age, and one who could handle men. They would prefer a man of good physical build, approximately 6 feet tall, and one who would weigh around 180 pounds. I wasn't exactly right for the job, but they didn't really care. Look at this old letter. I remember I sent this home to my mother after my first few weeks on the job. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it after my first day. October 25th, 1943. Dear Mama, my first week on the job was hard. I was given no instruction upon arrival, and the odor of the whole building, but especially the day room, was overpowering. I fear I will never be able to wash this smell off of me. The ground is covered in feces, and the patients are hardly bathed. I've made some friends, though. Frank Olmsted, after his first day, said I'd been in storms at sea, in train wrecks, and in Moscow during Bolshevik Revolution. But I've never had quite the feeling that I had when I turned from that locked door to face 300 insane. I don't think I could have said it any better. After arriving on my first day, they closed the door behind me and locked me in. I turned and saw the strangest thing. There were lots of skinny men, all looking like they hadn't eaten anything in days. One man's waist was less than 3 inches from front to back, and he weighed 35 pounds. Most of them weren't even given clothing. They were all crowded into a cold, dark cement room, crouching down and huddled against the walls. They looked at me with disgust, hatred, but mostly with fear. What is it that the past attendants have done that makes them so fearful? Why is it that these patients are just crammed into this place? The doctor came by today, but all he did was take one look at everyone and said they were fine. Even if he wanted to help them, he doesn't get enough money or resources, so all he can do is just enough to keep them alive. When the attendant was coming in for the night shift, he was handcuffing patients onto their gross beds with dirty sheets. Some don't even get sheets. In the day room, there are patients in straitjackets and strapped to chairs. The other attendants claim that it's to keep them from hurting themselves. But can that sort of thing be justified? After arriving on my first day, the man showing me around handed me a pipe. He said that if things got out of control, that I should just use this, that it always works. I could never beat anyone. All we do is custodial care. It's all we have time for. I have about 500 patients to take care of. A normal day's work for me is filling out reports and going with doctors and supervisors on their rounds of the wards. I try to see to it that the patients are dressed and fed, I do the best I can with what I'm given. I pass out medicine, supervise ward housekeeping, and make sure that discipline is maintained on my ward. Most of us keep a diary or write a daily report. But I don't feel I'm helping these patients. There are men getting sick and dying all the time. There are rumors going around that a reporter from Life magazine is going to come and take pictures. It would get word to the public, and they would see how bad conditions are here and insist it changes. Oh, Mama, if only it were true. Look at this letter from a pal of mine from before the war. He didn't understand what it was that I was doing or why I was doing it. He thought I was a wussy for not going and fighting. Greg, why are you trying to help them? It doesn't matter. After all, the patients are crazy, aren't they? They don't know what's happening to them, do they? Loonies don't need heat. You're wasting your time. They can't be cured. They're locked up in these places for a reason. Can you believe that? He didn't even see the patients as human. One quote from an article on the topic by Albert Deutsch said the atmosphere reeks with the false notion that the mentally ill are criminals and subhumans who should be denied all human rights and scientific medical care. When that Life magazine article came out, it was revolutionary. Did you know Eleanor Roosevelt, the president's wife, was the first one to see the pictures? Charlie Lord came to her with his photographs of the patients. He told her all about what was going on and that she should read Frank L. Wright Jr.'s book, Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote an article to the press, and soon enough, articles on the topic were being published. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote an article herself in her newspaper column called My Day. Here, look. July 22nd, 1947. A book that everyone should read is Out of Sight, Out of Mind by Frank L. Wright Jr. The book, which described conditions at state mental hospitals, has just been published by the newly formed National Mental Health Foundation. It is composed of 2,000 conscientious objectors' reports of 46 hospitals in the United States. Mr. Wright's forceful book cannot fail to shock us, to awaken us, to impel us to action. It is not pleasant reading, for it deals realistically with exceptionally unpleasant thoughts. Nevertheless, Americans should read it, for unless these thoughts are faced frankly and the problem solved satisfactorily, many of thousands of mentally handicapped persons will continue to be out of sight and out of mind. Then, as Eleanor Roosevelt had suggested, stories about the state hospitals were being published. Charlie Lord's photos were everywhere. Philadelphia Record did a front-page spread on Byberry. Cleveland Press was publishing multiple articles. The people in charge of the institutions were going in to see what they thought should be done. A national uproar is what we called it. Change was coming. Johnny, those articles drove people to help. The Selective Service ended soon after in 1946. By then, there were about 3,000 of us conscientious objectors in 61 different hospitals. 700 college and medical students were going into the hospitals and training schools each year. Throughout the 1940s through 60s, people were inspired to help reform. Things drastically changed. The patients no longer feared being beaten. Conditions were getting better, but still not how they should be. Soon, though, all state hospitals were shut down. The people, throughout the 1940s through 60s, everyone wanted to help. Different kinds of treatment were being tried. The doctors, patients were moved into small group homes where they were able to live more normal lives. Lots of people just like you can now live a normal life with the diseases people used to be hospitalized for. As a conscientious objector who went in and uncovered what was going on in the hospitals, I've helped revolutionize care for mentally ill patients and the way they were treated. Without our efforts, some patients might still be out of sight and out of mind.
It's a very interesting topic. I appreciate you doing it. I learned some things. I knew that theaters were a lot of conscientious objectors during
Yeah.
World War II that I didn't realize. I didn't know about Eleanor Roosevelt's involvement, so thank you, you're an educator.
Yes, thank
And you love the theater.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you decide on this topic? Like, I mean, it's very specific.
Well, I went through multiple ideas and lots of different drafts of trying to come up with a script on different topics. So I started out with musical theater, and I was wondering the history of that. But as I was thinking about the topic, the theme of this year, I was also really interested in mentally ill patients. And so I decided to go along that road. And first I was going to do Welsh versus Newt, which was a Minnesota law case where he was suing Minnesota because of his daughter's poor treatment in the hospitals. And then I couldn't find enough primary sources on that, so I was going through the history and how Dorothea Dix started it and everything. But then I heard about how conscientious objectors went into the hospitals, and that they were the first ones to go in, ever. It was usually closed off to all outsiders, and so the things that they saw were shocking, and the reform that came with that, so I thought it was really interesting.
It is interesting, and you did a really nice job.
Thank you.
It was riveting. You can't look away, you know. Anything you want us to ask you? Anything you want to tell us?
Something that I wanted to fit into my piece that I couldn't exactly figure out where it should go was the attendants before conscientious objectors. They mistreated the patients so badly, and a lot of them were drunks, or they were given the choice between prison or working at the asylums.
Fascinating.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.